Well, good afternoon, Holy Trinity. This is Pastor Daniel checking in with you for the second of the 3 stewardship videos. Now, today's video is entitled Blessings. And in the video, we're going to talk about both the blessings that the church has received, but also the way the church has been a blessing. But before I get to that, I wanted to address one thing that came up several times from those who watched the previous video, and it involved the background behind me. One of the questions that I received was, wait a minute, if you're filming this in the church, why is the white sash over the cross? Because that's the sash for Easter, and we're far from Easter. So how did you film this in the church with the white sash on the cross? And the answer is this: I'm not actually in the church when I'm filming this particular video or the video prior. I'm using Zoom, and Zoom is our online meeting platform. I used it last week because it enabled me to blend the PowerPoint presentation with all of the graphs and the slides. I was able to blend that in with a video of myself facing the camera. But what I'm actually doing is I'm sitting at my laptop, and I have the Zoom platform running, and I'm able to record that. And what it does is it enables me to incorporate other aspects of my computer into the recording. It was the easiest way to do last week's video. This week doesn't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I decided to keep the theme rolling and record this video through Zoom with the church in my background. But this is what they call a virtual background. It's actually a picture that I took of the church way back in Easter. And I often use it as my background when I do Zoom calls within the church or at the diocese and things like that, because it represents Holy Trinity. But I wanted to show everyone that, I can change the background, and to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I can go into the settings, and I can say, move myself to outer space. So as you can see now, the background has changed. I'm in outer space. Keeping with the outer space theme, I can now be in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. Or I can go to the happiest place on earth and go to Disney World in Orlando, Florida. Or if I want to be really, really silly, I can just throw a picture of myself up as the background and do a meeting like this, which would just be completely and utterly obnoxious. But that's to answer the question. Some folks who were pretty observant were wondering, now, wait a minute, if you did a video, did you record this way back in Easter since the white sash is over the cross? And no, that's not the case. I wish I planned that far out in advance, but God has not blessed me with that level of pre-planning. I'm filming this on my laptop, and I'm simply using the picture as a background, but it is a picture of Holy Trinity. So to explain that, I thought I'd open the video this week with the explanation of the virtual background. But without further ado, why don't we dive into the section of this video and the whole point of this video, which is to discuss the blessings during this time, during this year and this time of coronavirus. Bear with me a second. I'm setting up a couple of notes that I'll be able to read. So I've decided to divide the blessings into 2 main categories. One is what I call the inward blessings, and one is the outward blessings. In the inward blessings, I'm primarily talking about the blessings that we have received to the church, how God has used the members of this church or other types of things to bless this church, and how, even though the coronavirus has completely changed this entire year, how yet we have still been blessed. The second section will talk about the outward blessings, how God has used us to bless the community around us. But before we get to those, I just want to say that it should go without saying that this is just not a normal year. You know, Holy Trinity is a church that is deeply rooted in outreach and getting out into the community and doing all sorts of things with the community to be a blessing. And unfortunately, COVID-19 has allowed much of that to simply just not happen, because a lot of it were gatherings of people where we went and gathered and did work out in the community and outreach organizations and things like that. It's been very, very, very difficult to do that. Not to mention, we were shut down for worship. We weren't able to do even some of the more simple things that we always did. But slowly and surely, we've been able to re-engage in some of those opportunities as the safety protocols have allowed us to. But let's get to the blessings inward, the inward blessings, the ways that we have been blessed even amidst this time of COVID-19. The first couple I want to focus on are actually how the church has been blessed financially during a downturn. One of the main things that happened was the PPP loan. Those were funds that were made available through the government that we were able to apply for and get to help assist us during the economic downturn. If you may recall, there were 2 rounds of these funds, and the first time the funds were made available, the funds went so fast that by the time we got our application ready, all the funds had dried up. And so we patiently waited, and Grace Smith, who's our administrator, made sure everything was ready to go. Our application was complete, it was finalized, and all we had to do was wait for the day when the federal government opened up a second round of funding, and our application was ready to go. So as soon as that day happened, our application was sent in and was received and approved. And so we received over $20,000 in funding for the PPP loan. And the next step of that is the loan forgiveness. Keep in mind, this is a loan from the federal government, but many nonprofits will be able to apply for a loan forgiveness, and at that point, it will become a grant. Our application for the loan forgiveness is ready to go. We're just simply waiting on them to open up that portal. And as soon as that happens, we're going to apply for and will receive forgiveness of this loan. And so all that $20,000+ that we received would have been a grant to help us through the downturn. So that was a tremendous blessing that we were able to receive to help the church out financially. Another one, many may not know this at the church, but we received a $10,000 gift from a member of our church. That when COVID first hit and the economic downturn was happening, we had a member of our church give the church $10,000 so that the church could continue in its operations. And once again, that was an unforeseen. We didn't know it was coming, but that was a major gift and blessing that was provided to us by a member of our congregation. In addition to that, there's been the joint increase of giving to the church. We budget so many dollars a year for pledging, as we talked about in the last video. And the 2020 pledging numbers began to go up during the economic downturn. What that meant was the members of the church who were pledging to the church began to give additional funds to the church to help us out during the economic downturn. This was never something we even asked for. I never did a request or a video about that. It just started happening. The members of the church saw a need and they began to contribute more to the church. And all of a sudden, we had an influx of funding into the church, which again, completely unforeseen, unplanned, but yet the people saw and responded and began to give generously to the church during this downturn. Another big factor was the thrift store. The thrift store was closed for 2 months. And so that was going to impact our bottom line because we rely on, as you saw in the last video, the revenues from the thrift store. But I got to tell you, the revenue performance of the thrift store since they've reopened has been off the charts. The thrift store is doing amazing from an income standpoint ever since we reopened the thrift store, and they have exceeded the projections for revenues for the year already. And by the time we reach the end of December, we're projecting that the total revenues and income from the thrift store will exceed the annual projection with being shut down 2 entire months, which is absolutely mind-blowing and fascinating that they have been able to do what they've been able to do, even being shut down for 2 entire months, that they were able to close the gap and at the end of the year come out in the positive. Again, just another tremendous blessing that we did not see coming, but yet has been bestowed upon us. One of the blessings in disguise was actually when Nick, our organist, left the church. I don't want you to hear me wrong here. I was really and earnestly looking forward to working with Nick and to developing a new music program with Nick. But Nick left right at the beginning of March to pursue other opportunities. And then it was March 22nd when we had to transition to complete virtual worship. And so for several months, if we had had Nick still on the books as an employee, we would have been paying him, but we wouldn't really been able to use his talents. And so when he left, he actually opened up an area of the budget where we didn't have to fund a staff position. We didn't know this at all when Nick decided to pursue other opportunities and leave. But at the end, it became a blessing because that was a staff position we weren't having to fill at a time when we were going through an economic downturn with the church. So you look at all those things, the addition of the PPP loan, the $10,000 gift, the increased giving in the church, and the increased support from the thrift store, and then being able to have the benefit of not needing to pay a staff position. It has done marvelous things and allowed us to stay very, very financially afloat, sound, and actually ahead of the game during this time of uncertainty. But it doesn't even stop there. The church office and the finance committee, we began to look at ways that we can save monies from a monthly and an annually basis, looking over the budget and see where we can cut some unnecessary costs and things like that. One of the big ones was our copy machine. Probably people don't know that the old copy machine was something that we had to lease. And we leased the machine and we had monthly payments that we were paying. We began to look into buying our own and used machine and then just paying the costs that we need to maintain that machine. And we went ahead and moved forward with that. And did you know that that is now saving us $269 a month in copy machine costs? That equates $3,228 a year that we're now able to save by purchasing our own used machine and then simply paying the costs necessary to maintain it. That was a huge savings that we were able to incorporate into this year that we've been going through. Another one was we consolidated our ACS software. ACS is the church software program and platform that we use that manages all of our church management and our church books. ACS recently offered a new system called Realm that we can transition to that not only allows us to streamline the books of the church, but also will eventually open new doors for people to have their own login and account, and to adjust their own information and gather their own statements and things like that. There's a lot of wonderful things that Realm will be able to benefit us in the future as we roll out those features. But one of the things it allowed us to do was it allowed us to cut some of our bank vendors for online payments. And now it's all consolidated into one program. And that's also saving us $160 a month. And annually, that's almost $2,000 that we're now able to save by consolidating that software program. That was another savings that we were able to incorporate into the year. And a final one, and this is a very recent change in addition to our church, where we upgraded all of the thermostats, the AC thermostats that control our AC system. We upgraded them to all new modern Wi-Fi controlled thermostats. And what that allows us to do, it allows us to centrally control all of our air conditioners across the campus. We can now control them remotely. If someone is not here to make adjustments, we can do that remotely. Some of the church staff have access to do that. But another thing it's going to do is it allow us to tighten up the schedules of our AC when it turns on and when it turns off, and then eliminate some of the frivolous running of the system when it was running when no one was here. And that's going to save in electricity. We don't have any projections as of yet, but we do anticipate that that's going to be an additional savings that we'll be able to incorporate in energy savings and a bill that will decrease, that we won't have to pay. So all of this is just adding up to a tremendous amount of blessings that we've been able to receive, even in this difficult and economic downturn. But I don't want to only talk about the dollars and cents. I mean, let's talk about some of the blessings that we've been able to receive that are beyond the dollars and cents. You know, I think back to when we first transitioned to in-person worship, from in-person worship to virtual worship. You know, for many churches, that was a tough transition to be able to make. But I think back, and I think at the first couple of steps when we went to those pre-recorded videos and worship, that was a relatively smooth transition. We were able to get the worship services out to everyone. Folks were learning how to engage and watch the videos online, and then make comments on Facebook and YouTube and things like that, so they could stay connected and engaged. You know, that itself was a blessing, because that was a big change for the church. And I think we handled that marvelously. But then came the time to transition back to in-person worship, but we needed a way to live stream our worship. And before we could do that, remember, we had to go through that campus-wide internet and Wi-Fi upgrade. You know, and we had, thanks to the sale of the property and some donations that we received, we had the funding to upgrade the entire Wi-Fi system across the campus, to get a hardwire internet connection over to the church building, and offer Wi-Fi in our church building. I mean, we were able to do that, and that will be able to give us many new expandability and opportunities for the future, but it also paved the way for us to be able to live stream our Sunday morning worship services. And then, of course, we began live streaming our Sunday morning services. And we made some adjustments there. If you remember, there was a learning curve there. It didn't sound good at first. We were dealing with audio issues. So then we transitioned to Boxcast. We tweaked our audio system a little bit, and that led us to what we have today with our live stream, and able to live stream the worship services to the entire congregation, and then beyond. Do you know that we now have online members of our church? We have people that have found us online that don't even live in Florida, who enjoy our worship services, and they tune in every single week, watch our worship services, engage in social media, and then even make contributions, financial contributions to our church, because they enjoy what we're doing online. Just again, another list of wonderful blessings that has happened to us even during difficult and challenging downturn. But it doesn't stop there. I mean, look at the volunteers, the folks that have been helping out at the church. After we reopened for worship, we slowly began to reopen the office. Our church office volunteers began to show back up and help out with the items that we needed help with in the church office. We have our worship volunteers, those who acolyte and serve and usher and all of those kinds of things. They have been helping us out on a weekly basis, every Sunday morning, having to deal with some of the changes that we've made. And that's been a tremendous blessing also to have our volunteers return. Another group of volunteers that's been helping out that many people don't know about are those that have been coming and helping out with our exterior and landscaping. Ernie Coquette is kind of silently coordinating a group of people who come and they trim the hedges and they clear our parking lot, and they do other items outside the church, and help out with our landscaping and help keep our property beautiful and trimmed and clean and looking good. I mean, they've been doing their thing this entire time, and very, very few people know that that's even going on. I mean, this is the time and the talent piece where people are good stewards and they give back to the church. These are all blessings that the church has received during this time, and I'm probably leaving some out and forgetting some. But when you look at the fact that we can't do a lot of the things that we would normally do, it truly is amazing the blessings that we have been able to receive at the church, and how the people have continued to bless this church even during difficult and uncertain times. And I think it's good to just pause and recognize all those things and ways in which the church has been blessed, both by God and by the people around us. So those are what I would call the inward blessings. Now I'd like to talk about some of the outward blessings. And these are the blessings that in which Holy Trinity can be a blessing to those around us. So I want to talk about at first our outreach committee. And the outreach committee does a number of things. But again, especially during the downturn, we haven't been able to organize a lot of the outreach gatherings and projects and things like that. But we have been able to disperse funding to local charities, national charities, and things like that engage in assistance for those in need. And I'd like to go over just some of the dollar figures that this church has been able to contribute to other nonprofits through the outreach committee. For instance, the farm workers, an outreach that is near and dear to the heart of this church. This year, so far, we have given $1,700 in a variety of assistance programs that are going to assist our local farm workers right here in Florida. Our farm workers, unfortunately, are some of the most impoverished people that we have. Many are immigrants to this country. They don't have a lot of resources. They're not paid very well, but yet 85% of the food that we eat, of all the food that we eat, 85% is going to go through the hands of some of these farm workers. And this has been something that Holy Trinity has helped out with. We've given $1,700 to help them out. And we also have the upcoming Christmas donations with the blankets and the diapers and gift cards to continue to help out the farm workers. This is a major way that we can be a blessing to these people in need. We've also given $1,500 to Episcopal Relief and Development. So this is our big national charity organization called ERD, Episcopal Relief and Development, that does good works, not just in our own country, but around the world. Episcopal Relief and Development is one of the top organizations that gives the most of the donated funds back to the hands and feet of those who really need it. Our Episcopal Relief and Development, the administrative side of it is funded through the national church. So therefore, almost all of the donated funds can go directly to the places at which they're being donated. For instance, just recently we gave $1,000 to the hurricane relief. We know that in Central America, around Honduras and that area, they were hit back to back with 2 Category 4 hurricanes, and that area is in desperate need of assistance. And so we were able to earmark 1,000 of those $1,500 that we gave to ERD specifically to hurricane relief, because those monies will be sent down there to help down those people in Central America because of the hurricanes. So that's another way we've given. We've given $600 to local hunger and food banks, especially during the downturn when a lot of donations, the actual donations of canned foods and dry foods and things like that have been down. We were able to give monies to them so that those food banks can purchase the foods that they need to be able to distribute. We've given $600 to local homeless programs that shelter people, that when families are displaced and they need a place to live, there's organizations locally that can house them and then help rehabilitate them and give them the resources and the skills that they need to get back on their feet. We gave $500 to the Guardian Ad Litem program, which is a program for children that are caught in the court system, in particular with separated families, divorce situations, and things like that. So we gave $500 to the Guardian Ad Litem program. We gave $500 to veterans counseling services. We all know that with PTSD, the suicide rate with our veterans is at an all-time high, and there's local counseling services for veterans that we decided to fund to give them assistance so we can continue to support our veterans who need psychological help in dealing with PTSD. So we gave $500 there. We gave $300 to the Clearwater Free Clinic, where it's a funded clinic where doctors will donate their time, medical professionals will donate their time, and it offers free healthcare, local healthcare, for those who are in need, for those who cannot afford to go to the doctor, for those who cannot afford to get their prescriptions, who simply need assistance now and do not have any insurance. There's a free clinic here in Clearwater, and we gave them $300 to continue their ministry to those in need. And finally, we gave, you might remember back, we gave about $200 to a program that was giving games and puzzles and activities for at-risk children and children who are in poverty. So that's just an overview, but look at the dollar figure: $1,700, $1,500, $600, $600, $500, another $500, $300, and $200. These are all monies that we were able, through the work of this church, to be able to give back to our local charities and community. And that's just an incredible way that we can be a blessing to those around us when we can't do things with our own hands and feet during this time. We can give financial support to those who are doing this work. But we still, we were shut down for worship for a short time. We began to gather for worship again, and most recently, we've begun our weekly collection of food items that go to our local food banks and charities on Sunday mornings. So, the foods that people bring in on Sunday mornings or during the week, we're back to collecting those and distributing those on a monthly basis to the local food banks that we give to. And that's been back in the bulletin and in the Friday email. You can see those organizations that we're giving to each month. That's gotten kicked back up. We started something called the blessing bags. The blessing bags are kept here at the church, up in the church office. And these are grocery bags that have non-perishable food items and toiletries in them that we can give to people who are in need who come to the church. So for instance, I've given out several of these bags when people came looking for financial assistance, assistance with bills and things like that. I've been able to help people that way through my discretionary funds. So we've distributed about $1,000 in discretionary funds, helping people out with their power bill, water bill, electric bill, things like that. We've been able to do that, and that's another blessing that we've been able to be to the community. But several of them, I've been able to ask, do you need food? Do you need help? Can I give you a bag of items to take with you? And several have taken advantage of that. And they've taken these blessing bags with them. That way they can walk out of here with items that they need, basic items that they need for food and items for the home. So that's another way that we've been able to be a blessing. And then, of course, our own site continues to be a pathway to be a blessing. We've got a workout group called the Gladiators that uses our site for outdoor workouts. We've got several music groups that use our facility, one outdoors and one indoors for their rehearsals. We've been able to develop COVID protocols that allow them to safely do that, but allow us to be able to be a place and a hub for community groups to gather and use our site so that they can do the wonderful things that they want to do. We've been able to do all that. In the past, we have been a site for Alcohol Anonymous and Alcohol Anonymous meetings. Technically, we're still a site, but Alcohol Anonymous is not gathering because of COVID protocols, and they're not able to do virtual meetings, or they are doing virtual meetings, but they don't host them here at our site. But they still give us a contribution every single month. Did you know that? Alcohol Anonymous doesn't meet at our site any right now because of their own COVID protocols, but they still contribute to the church as if they are meeting here, simply to be an outreach back to us. And when their COVID protocols allow them, they're going to gather here again. And again, another amazing blessing that they have been to us and we to them during this time of uncertainty and COVID shutdown. But then we have one massive piece of blessing, and that is the thrift store. I've talked about all of the ways that outreach has helped out and how we continue to help out as a community and use our site as an outreach. But the biggie is the thrift store. Earlier I talked about how the thrift store has been a financial blessing to the church. But now let's talk about how the thrift store is a blessing to the community. I mean, this is a place where, members of our church and other members of churches come to share their time and talent as they volunteer to work our thrift store. That is a major way for people to be able to give back by being a volunteer in our thrift store. This thrift store provides very affordable items to the larger community. That's one of the reasons why our thrift store revenues are so high right now, is because of the need, because of the financial downturn, and because of people losing their jobs, and because of people having their hours cut. They need a place to buy affordable items. And that's why our thrift store business is literally booming right now, because we're being such a wonderful outreach to the community, offering half-price clothing and furniture and all different types of items that we can provide simply because they're donated to us. People are flocking to our thrift store to get affordable items for their homes and for themselves. And it's just a wonderful blessing to hear the stories. We hear them. Our thrift store leaders, myself, we get phone calls from people who have just been blessed by the thrift store, and they thank us. They thank Holy Trinity for having the thrift store, for being open, for having the hours that we do, so that they can come and get items that they need, affordable and less expensive items that they need for their homes. Sometimes we give away items. People will come to the thrift store who are just in desperate need for some clothing or some items for the house, but they don't have any money at all. And our thrift store managers will just give them things without any charge, without any cost. They just simply allow them to take some items that they need as a free gift back to the community. Again, just a wonderful way the thrift store can be a blessing. We've got a lady named Sue who comes in, and she has a ministry called Wellness Ministries. This is a homeless ministry for families that she runs out of her own house. And when she gets word that a family has been displaced and put out on the streets, she goes and helps them. She's a patron of our thrift store. She comes here once a week, sometimes every other week. She will spend hundreds of dollars in our thrift store buying things that she needs to give to the homeless people that have come to her. Furniture items that she needs when she tries to house these homeless people. She comes off quite often and takes the furniture items off our hands that we don't have a way to sell. She'll take them and put them to good use. She buys other furniture items for us. She buys clothing. I mean, it's amazing how one ministry is helping another ministry in this case, where she goes and helps out displaced families through her ministry. And our thrift store is a major source of items for her because she too can get these things at a reduced price and keep her own ministry rolling. You know, we have an entity called Reemployment, which is where we source some of our volunteers. Reemployment is an organization that takes folks who have been hurt on the job and who are currently receiving some form of disability, and they are allowed to work, but only underneath certain specific parameters that are set up through the doctors and through the unemployment system and the disabled worker system. So we get volunteers. So they're volunteers for us, meaning that they come to us as a volunteer. But this group, Unemployment, is actually paying them money to be a volunteer for us. So it's a win-win. You've got workers that are desiring to work, but they can't work at full capacity because of an injury or some form of a disability. So this group, Reemployment, pays them some monies to get back out into the workplace under the guidance of their doctors. But then for us, it's volunteer work. We do not have to pay for them. This organization pays for them to work. So again, it's a win-win. It's another outreach where we can be a place of blessing for someone who's desiring to work, but can't work under normal circumstances because of a disability. You know, we're a Bright Futures, which is the scholarship for Florida, for high schoolers. They come and do their Bright Futures scholarship hours, their community service hours that they need here at the thrift store, especially on the weekends. You will have high schoolers working at our thrift store to get their community service hours. Again, just another way we can be a place for that to happen. And another one is the actual community service through the courts and the sheriff's office. You know, we actually get certain candidates, certain very low-risk candidates who need to do their community service hours that have been set upon them by the court system. They come and also are volunteers and can do work at our thrift store and get the hours that are required of them. You know, so you just look at the totality of everything that happens in our thrift store and how we can be, you know, a hub for the community for outreach, both with people getting items that they need, but also having a place for people to work and to volunteer their own time and talent. And again, that is just a wonderful way our thrift store, especially during this downturn, can be a blessing back out to the community. So that is, in a nutshell, my video for the day. But yet, I think a wonderful snapshot at just how this church has received blessings from God and also from people, but also how we can be a blessing. We can be the hands and feet of Christ right here in Clearwater out to those around us, and how we can be a beacon of hope for those around us. And so that's how I wanted to spend our time this second stewardship video, just looking at the ways we've been blessed and the ways we can be a blessing. So that's video number 2. The third video will be coming shortly, and I hope to tie it all together, everything from the last video and from this video, as we look forward and give thanks back to God for all the wonderful ways that God has blessed us and has used us to be a blessing. So until then, as I am accustomed to say, just know that until we can see each other face to face once again, just know that my thoughts and prayers are with each and every one of you. And may God's blessings be upon us all always. Bye-bye now.